Anatomy Movie. Its mission, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. That's right, we're going to dissect Star Trek Beyond, and we're going to talk about cinematography, casting, story, and all that fun stuff. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back if you're a fan. Welcome for the first time if you're just joining us. We have Demetri Panos on the panel, returning in a sporting outfit.
Hello, movie fans. Live long and prosper.
And John Comerford.
In a pseudo-coordinated outfit.
I'm Captain Kirk.
Indeed. And I'm Phil Svitek. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of things. If you guys are fans of the show, you know that we're very spoiler-filled. We assume that you've seen the movie, so approach it from that perspective. Second, you can download our rundown in the descriptions. It has all of our notes and things like that, so you can follow along and see kind of the supplementary material that we don't always get to. And third, we're going to talk about Star Trek Beyond today. We'll also, we'll tie it into the rest of the franchise. But fear not, fans, we will be doing a Star Trek 50th anniversary special. So you'll get all the Star Trek you ever wanted. So stay tuned for that, definitely.
You can never want enough.
Indeed. Let's start with Demetri Panos, arguably and unarguably the biggest fan of certainly this panel of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think?
Well, it's going to be a little bit longer than our usual. I have a lot to say about this movie, about everything, but my thoughts I had to reel a lot in and think about this movie a lot. First off, I did think it was a blast. I thought the cast, again, really gels. Like, since the first Star Trek movie in 2009, casting department did a great job putting these folks together. There was lots of humor in this movie. There were a lot of references to the original series and movies. But there have been a lot, if you've been reading the reviews on this particular movie, a lot of reviewers, and many of them are like self-proclaimed, like the biggest fans of Star Trek, are saying that, they think that this movie, Beyond, is like the closest to resembling the original series episodes and movies. My take is a little bit different on that. I actually sort of kind of disagree. I think tonally, this is the farthest movie away from the original. And in my opinion, like, here's why. For me, this was the first Star Trek of any kind, whether it's television, animated series, or movies. I think this is that was predicated on action over story, coming in with Jess and Lynn. Now, that's not to say I thought the story sucked. The story, I felt, used some common tropes that Star Trek, the original series, used. Things like, there was always there was a mission where the Enterprise had to find a lost Commodore or Captain, or a Commodore goes insane and Kirk has to suss things out. So that is a common trope. The Bones Kirk sharing a drink is a common theme, or the Doctor
around
and
the birthday
Captain.
too.
Right, around that's Wrath of Khan, which would but even throughout this series, Doctor, Captain having their conversation while sharing a Romulan ale or a Saurian brandy is like a common thing. So, but those episodes, like, again, a lot of these episodes, they did focus on a dramatic element. There was something that good science fiction and Star Trek in particular always did, was mirror society. This one didn't quite do that. It's the most action in a Star Trek anything ever. And while there are nods to the original, I just feel like references do not a movie make. Albeit, I think the references used in Beyond were far better utilized than, say, my worst movie of the year, Ghostbusters, where it felt so forced onto me that it took me out of the picture. These were like slight, gentle nods. They never took me out of the moment of the movie. They played as a natural means of the storytelling. So, however, with that said, I did feel that the movie was too actiony. This was the first Star Trek of any incarnation where I actually had to suspend disbelief in certain scenes. And Justin Lin, like, let's just say, he didn't do a horrible job. On the contrary, in the Fast and Furious movies, this guy breaks every single law of physics. No demand, but you buy it. You suspend your disbelief. I think that, in space, not all those rules need apply. So there were certain scenes where I felt he was amazing. And there were shots of like the Enterprise or space things that were going on that I actually said, wow. I said, that's great. But there were other sequences that I felt went on a little bit too long. And then he even had to throw in a Fast and Furious moment in the movie where Kirk and Jayla, they synchronize their time and height and they jump at the same time to hug. And I'm like, was it cool? Well, it was sort of cool, but I'd seen it in 2 Fast and Furious movies before. I'm not sure it was needed here, and especially since we've had space jumps in Star Trek, I felt the previous 2 movies did a far better job in creating like a suspense going other than the Fast and Furious moment here. This was a very good summer popcorn movie. And again, I think there was one particular scene where I actually did get emotional that Justin Lin handled with a lot of tender love and care, and that's when Spock opens up Spock Prime's picture and we see the original crew of the Enterprise. It didn't take me out. I actually said, kudos. That's a really nice nod to our original cast, and I thought it was done out of great respect. So I think the score was really good. Editing was fine. The pacing was fine outside of some action scenes being long. It's a very good summer popcorn movie. The first time I think I've ever said Star Trek as a popcorn movie. So there you go.
John?
Where do I start? Just that I think I'm on the other end of the spectrum here. I didn't enjoy that.
You thought it was too heady?
No, I thought not liking it. I can't say I disliked it because I didn't dislike it, but I didn't like it. I think it never got out of impulse power for me. It never reached warp speed. The action sequence notwithstanding, but I thought the action sequence. Because you made the point. I thought the story took a second seat. And I didn't think that was. It didn't engage me because of that. So, and I didn't like a lot of the action sequences. I don't like the way he composes his shots. I think the frenetic use and the never giving us context that drives me nuts. So that doesn't work for me. So overall, it wasn't a great popcorn experience. I wanted it to be, but I remember at some point during the movie, I was wishing I was somewhere else.
You wish you could transport it.
Yeah, I wanted to. I honestly was thinking, God, I know because we're going to be doing Bourne next week. I was going, gosh, I wish I was watching Bourne right now. So I wanted to get teleported. So.
Well, for me, I did enjoy it. I do agree that I thought for me there was nice. What I liked was as much as there was action, I felt it was motivated by thinking, and everyone kind of strategized and everyone had a role to play. And I thought there was a very great balance of all the characters. It wasn't just on Kirk. It wasn't just on Spock. Everyone had a role to play, even though ultimately, like it just kind of comes down to Kirk and Krall. And I have to commend it. Like, is it the best movie I've ever seen? No, but in a summer where sequels just have failed and even reboots, you know what? I gotta give them a nod and say, at least you succeeded.
Yeah, I don't disagree in that. In fact, of all of these summer sequels and reboots that have gone, Star Trek Beyond has gone beyond all of them. I mean, it really was one of the times where I had the most fun, this summer in watching a sequel. Yeah. To your point, I agree with that wholeheartedly. We've been let down like quite a lot.
We're almost at the end.
Yeah.
We're coming into the final stretch. So, and I thought comedically it was done really well. Obviously, I think in large part due to Simon Pegg. This is his kind of first foray into something more dramatic, but I like the humor.
Yeah.
I thought he did a fantastic job with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's undeniable that Simon Pegg is a fan. Yeah. It really is. And I just think that there was so much of fan, and they wanted to put in this humor, this infused humor, especially between Bones and Spock, which is, that's a thorough thread. That's a through line through the original series and the movies and whatnot, but it almost seemed like they were ODing on it. It was almost like they were relying on it. And while, again, the banter was great and the if I'm not buying any of these actors playing these roles, I'm out. I would have been checked out in 2009. But I do buy them, and I think they did a really good job. I just wished that they did take a little more time and care to focus, like predicating the story around the action. Like, let's not use action as a means of like going from point A to B. It's got to be organic. It's got to be in there. And when you look at the really good movies, whether it be Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, or Undiscovered Country, or even like things like First Contact, the action in there is really solid and good, but they have a good Star Trek story.
Well, let's
to
talk
tell.
about, I mean, we'll talk about the full development, but just even like they had, by the time Simon Pegg got to it, he had about 2 months of lead time to write a script.
Yeah.
And then once they started shooting, they had about 13 months of a runway before this thing had to get out there. To put that, I have somewhere in the full notes in the rundown, what's one of the movies that's coming out next year has at least a 17-month window.
Right.
So 13 months is not, I mean, that's incredible. And again, to succeed to any degree is tremendous, where all these other movies are just not doing that.
Yeah.
So I have to commend him for that. And I think part of, any shortcomings, I think it stems from that. They just didn't have time.
Yeah, which is a bummer, because I think that they were so focused on. This is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, right?
Yeah, you can't miss that deadline. You
can't miss. No, yeah, you can't. But at the same time, I have a really huge disappointment in Paramount on this, because they really didn't give it the tender loving care that, say, MGM Sony gave James Bond for Skyfall. Like, everything going around Skyfall, they did give it the time. They massaged it from a marketing standpoint, from a movie standpoint. And this, as much fun as I had on Beyond, it wasn't Skyfall. Like, Skyfall is like a solid James Bond movie from beginning to end, and that commemorates the 50th. That puts a mark and said, this is 50th. This one, I felt that they were sort of rushing, and everything came together towards the last minute to say, oh, it's the 50th anniversary, we got to get this out. There wasn't even, like, on the poster, there should have been
something,
the logo commemorating 50th anniversary of Star Trek. I mean, we got to make this big. I mean, 50 years.
I was surprised not to see any of that in the marketing.
I think it kind of works in this way. If you notice, Star Wars did this, right? Because technically it's the 7th, right? Mm-hmm. And they initially had it as episode 7, but what they didn't want to isolate audiences, so they took that away, and it became Star Wars: The Force Awakens, because they don't want numbers associated with it, because it would have isolated people.
But trust me, if Star Wars makes it to 50 years, which it will. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Disney is going to blast that out, and they're not going to care who's still around to remember when they first. Everybody is going to know that Star Wars is going to hit 50. This one, it didn't have that, and it should have. Star Trek deserves it. I mean, bottom line.
To survive that long in this kind of an environment, in this business,
from a show that stemmed from a brand that stemmed from TV in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
With that production value.
Right. Okay, so I know we're kind of we're going, but let's talk about the marketing, because the first trailer that came out, Simon Pegg was very adamant that this is not reflective of the movie, guys, and he was very upset that the reveals of the song were used in there, which to me, I mean, obviously the song, you're kind of anticipating the song, and if you have any recollection of the trailer, you're like, oh, I know what it's going to be.
Right, and it kind of ruins the whole reveal anyway.
Yeah.
At all.
So, I mean, what do you get? So, in terms of the marketing, you think overall it just didn't hit the mark?
I don't think it did. The fact that they did, no, I just don't think on any level that it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that Paramount screwed the pooch on this one. They literally, again, they came up with that awful first trailer, And as a Star Trek fan, I was so looking forward to see. And then I saw this, and I'm like, okay, and then, but then going forward, like after that first trailer come out, it was like radio silence. I went to CinemaCon where they had J.J. Abrams and Simon Pegg were there, and I was like going, oh, CinemaCon. I am going, oh, great, there. I'm going to see something here. Nothing. Like, they showed nothing at CinemaCon. Simon Pegg and even J.J. Abrams made casual reference to Justin Lin is working hard on this, but that was it. And after that, I walked out of CinemaCon going, they're in trouble. Yeah, Houston, we have a problem because it's the 50th, and they're throwing so much money into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'm like going, where's Star Trek? And it eventually came, but they crammed it into like a month and a half time, but then they came up with some great posters, but far better trailers. But it should have been stuff that should have, like that throwback poster that was the throwback to Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It should have been the first poster coming out a year ago, and there should have been the Star Trek logo, 50th anniversary. Like, get audiences like aware that this is going to be a nostalgic romp through memory lane. You're going to come back to Star Trek that you loved, and
There's an homage factor.
They had a fan event, and as a fan, I didn't even know that they had a fan event. Like, I was like, when the hell did this happen?
I know.
I was like, you had a fan event at Paramount?
And you're plugged into it.
And I'm like, how the hell did I miss a quote-unquote fan event? And I'm like, who gets to go to this fan event? I go, you weren't reaching out to me. Like, this had to be an elite, like, form of people that went there. And the other thing, too, is that I learned, it wasn't until later I was learned, they're having the premiere at Comic-Con. And the only way you can really go is if you were invited to the fan event to get credentialed. I'm like, how the hell? I know, what the hell's going on here? I felt really jilted as a fan about whatever opportunity that there was to be a part of what I understand was an amazing night. But I will say the one caveat for me, marketing-wise, is that they said, we're going to hold the premiere at Comic-Con. That, to me, said, okay, Paramount believes they have the goods because you are not going to show a stinker.
Yeah, but until then, you didn't think
exactly.
They projected, in my mind, the idea that they didn't have the goods.
I agree.
Yeah,
and to do that a week out, it wasn't even a week out. It was a week of.
I mean, it was week of. In terms of the Comic-Con premiere, again, I didn't get to go, but from what I hear, they like built out an IMAX version literally just for this, and instead of having the score as part of the movie, they played the score live.
Yeah, and this is something Gianchino has done. For all I know, he could have invented this 2 years ago, and you could have bought tickets. San Diego Symphony Orchestra, they did this in part of Comic-Con. They did it at the same location, and they had... I got to see this. It was amazing. I got to see the 2009 Star Trek accompanied by live orchestra. And you were able to purchase tickets, and I got tickets right up front, and it was amazing. And Gianchino was there, John Cho was there, and you got to see the movie. It wasn't as built out. It wasn't like an IMAX screen, but it was a huge-ass screen. And from there on in, now you see these sort of kind of events taking place at the Hollywood Bowl. But it would have been great to have been a part of it. But like I was saying, Paramount, at least, like, if they had a stinkeroo, they're not premiering at Comic-Con because social media, people are hitting send, before Fade to Black, and you just don't do that if you have a bad movie. So that, at least going into seeing the movie,
gave you some hope.
Paramount, it gave me some hope. So
fair enough. Well, before we get stabbed by fans, let's get into story. So, I mean, overall, like I said, it went through many sort of iterations, and then so much so, what I liked about it was that Simon Pegg kept quitting. Up to 4 times I read. And then JJ kept calling him and be like, all right, really? Come on,
go back. Come on, we need you. You got to finish it.
And it just... it just you know, a lot of these frustrations that we're talking about the marketing, he kind of felt from the writing perspective that, you know, he was getting too many notes on or whatever. And then Justin Lin gets hired, and he kind of throws his own idea in there, which it was his idea to blow up the Enterprise. And that was very controversial between them. And it wasn't, unfortunately, they couldn't do it face to face. It was a lot of phone and Skype, stuff like that. But okay, so why don't we talk about that notion to blow up the Enterprise?
Yeah, well, they've done it in multiple movies, so it's not like we haven't seen it done before. Although I have to say, as it was happening, are we really going to blow it up that early in the movie? All right, okay. Just as a fan, I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, it does happen early on. Now, it is interesting because it parallels the original series movies. You had Motion Picture Wrath of Khan, and then Star Trek 3, the third movie, is when they blow up the Enterprise. But I will say this, watching the Enterprise blow up in the search for Spock, like, that was just another death for me. Like, when Spock dies in Wrath of Khan, like, that's a big bummer.
Huge.
Seeing the Enterprise blow up,
what?
And it was like, that's a bummer. But there was a reason for it to happen. You know, it was, and Kirk and McCoy again having great dialogue. He's like, I did what I did, you know, to keep us alive and to keep this mission going. Like, this is what I had to do, and you know, we'll get other ships. We got to get Spock. Like, that's the most important thing. And blowing up the Enterprise was a means of survival in that movie. You know, in this movie, it turned out to be, I mean, I thought it was a great action sequence. But I was thinking to myself as it was happening, I was like, if you're planning on boarding the ship, why are you like throwing on such critical damage? Like, they were ripping the shit out of it.
It like,
and it was like, oh, that's my thing. All right, we'll decline.
How odd.
I'm getting a phone call. But yeah, that to me was just like weird. It's like, why are you pounding the ship into such critical damage and then you're gonna board it?
Yeah, and you have to find something on it. It just makes no sense.
But it looked fantastic.
And the more you blow up, the less you have to search.
I mean, you might blow up the very thing you're looking for.
No, because if it's that important, you're gonna, you know, that's your MacGuffin. Of course, someone's gonna hold on to it.
Okay, but they didn't know how important it was.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it was a great sequence. The saucer separation scene. Well, I mean, it wasn't. It was a saucer disconnection scene. You know, and again, that paralleled Generations, which we had an amazing saucer sep. Yeah. And then the crash done with models. This one was like great, but man, you know, was I sad that this Enterprise blew up? Nah, I'm already conditioned that there can be. And
they're just going to build another one.
As Jean-Luc Picard so aptly said at the end of Generations, there are many letters in the alphabet. So, yeah, I know that there's going to be an A. Great scene, though. That time lapse at the end of the movie, I thought was really awesome. I didn't feel the same emotional impact. It was, yet again, it was just another action scene sequence that looked phenomenal. But I didn't have that emotional impact from Star Trek 3.
I hated the way it was shot.
Did you really?
I did.
Even like the fight scenes and like, because I thought
they built this to mass scale. I mean, you know, one of the things that came out of it, Justin was looking for a blueprint of the Enterprise, and there apparently never was a blueprint for all of the Enterprise, so they had to create that for the very first time, ironically. But in terms of the actual set, like, it's really cool how they did it. You know, it's almost like Inception did it in a way where it had the rigs and you know, and the hallways turned every which way. This was similar, except at a much larger scale.
Yeah,
you know, and I don't know. Look, in terms of how they did it, I thought it was cool. In terms of how it actually looked in the movie, I didn't have a problem with it. Not for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't have a problem.
Half of it was good, and half of it was there were so many sequences that he was so tight on everything that you didn't have a. It's like, there's a hand, and I don't know what the hell's going on around it, and it was so frenetic. And I don't mind quick cuts and close-ups because there are plenty of action sequences that are great like that. This, to me, I hated his composition, and I just didn't think he had the eyeline right, and it was just confusing and not exciting. It was more annoying for me.
Yeah, and this, like I said, I thought, Justin Lin is able to break those laws of physics because we are sort of kind of in space, and the gimbaling that was used, I thought was done really well, and I like the pacing and the cutting from going to interiors, and there's something going on there, and then we go out to space. We go to the exteriors, and we see all the havoc that's being wreaked there. And then again, he shot the Enterprise almost in like this great way, and seeing it fly through space or a cloud or whatever. I enjoyed that sequence. I really did. I'm with you. So some people complained it was too dark. Somebody said to me they thought that it was too dark. And I'm like, well, I saw it in 3D and it was pretty cool.
Well, that's ironic because one of the things that they talk about, most sci-fi movies are too dark, and Star Trek allows you to have brighter colors and brighter palettes. I don't know, and yeah, maybe at times it's dark, but when they're on the planet, that's the brightest thing we've seen.
Yeah.
It's always daylight on that planet. So I don't know. Did you guys feel that it was a lot of people are comparing it that it was it felt like too much of an episode versus an actual movie, and whether or not that's true, it was certainly kind of more. It was their intention. I mean, Simon Pegg says when we spoke about writing beyond, let's make it as if it's an episode of the original series had been injected with gamma radiation. The crew happen upon a mysterious planet. They're on the surface. They meet an adversary. They learn a lesson. It's what the original series episodes were constructed by.
Yeah, I didn't find it to be episodic, other than the fact that they were doing things from the episodes, but they weren't doing it for the science fiction purpose of it. They again, Kirk, McCoy having a drink. That comes from the episodes or the movies. But I didn't feel it to be episodic, so to speak.
I guess, first off, I'm trying to define it fully in a way that I can articulate to others. I don't know, where, this just, I don't know, there is that distinction between a 2-hour episode and, an actual movie, but at the end of the day, to me, at this point, any movie just can continue.
Well, that's the point. I mean, Star Trek Now movies are episodic in a sense because we know we're going to have another.
Yeah.
So.
Right. And they make
and there
fun
is a
of
continuation from the last one.
Sure, yeah. So. And 966 days, which is a nice Easter egg, by the way. 966, September 1966, when Star Trek was born. But it's taking it further. They make fun of, at the opening, during the captain's log, he goes, he's just going about the doldrums of going through space. And he says, it's starting to feel a little episodic. Yeah. And, which was like those little nods. Some people didn't find them humorous. I found it to be funny. Probably my favorite is, why do my shirts keep on ripping? When Captain Kirk says that, I'm like, that's funny. Because if you watch the series, he's shirtless a lot because of his shirt ripping. Right. But I didn't find this to be episodic.
So, okay.
Did you? How about you? What were your thoughts?
Well, I didn't even. It didn't come either way to me as I was watching it.
I knew there'd be another movie after this, so I don't know.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I enjoyed the series, so even if it was
Kirk's dilemma, right? Because what I liked, they set up really well between Spock and Kirk, and set that up, and then it takes a backseat for most of the movie, and it gets resolved pretty quick at the end. Yeah. But in terms of Kirk, is his existential crisis solved by going to war at this point? Because the exploration part of it is what bored him to death.
Yeah. It was.
So I mean, what's your guys' take on that?
It's for me, it was a very interesting take because it seemed that they were making him admiral far too quickly.
Vice Admiral.
Vice Admiral. There wasn't... We were just getting into... And I thought what Star Trek Into Darkness did wonderfully. And I will defend Into Darkness. Me and another movie critic went head-to-head about this. But I thought what Into Darkness... One of the aspects that movie did very well was it showed the learning curve of, James Tiberius Kirk, in which he had to learn about what it meant to respect the chair and his crew and what self-sacrifice meant, and to if you're gonna jump into a situation, be aware of what's good. Be aware of yourself. What can you do? But you have to have that self-sacrifice. I felt that was a great Star Trek point, that he was just learning, and all of a sudden he's becoming vice admiral.
Yeah, I didn't quite get it.
Yeah,
I understood it. I was like, what? It just didn't ring. It didn't land real well.
Yeah, and if I could.
I mean, that wasn't what the problem I had with it. It was just
what was it? What was?
it was the fact that at the end of this, what gave him motivation was like, we just went on this great war action sequence.
Yeah,
but no,
and that was the takeaway.
But I think that's true. It was a little muddy, the whole thing for me, that storyline, and it's like it was hard for me to buy into that from the beginning. Like, what, you've been out there for how many years and that's it?
Well, and again, how many years has it been? Like, it's very interesting to me because in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, okay, Kirk by that time is an admiral or vice admiral, and they have to send the Enterprise out to they have to go explore intercept V'ger. They have to go check this thing out. And Kirk fights with Admiral Nagura to get the Enterprise, to at least be the person to take the Enterprise out. It's a major theme in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, about Jim, you should have never given up command. Like, that is your first best destiny. Right. They talk about that in great length. But you've had time for it to mature, to sink in, because a lot of time had gone by from the television series to when it made its debut on the big screen.
Yeah, there's weight behind it.
This one, it was like, this is the third movie.
Yeah.
He's just finding himself. I've only seen him in 2 movies, and all of a sudden he's becoming a vice admiral, and he's thinking of taking it. And I was like, well, I know he is the youngest captain to achieve, a captaincy.
I know, but the argument they're making is, because but I did this on a dare. It's not that I really wanted this,
right.
And I'm going, but we clearly saw that you wanted it.
Yeah,
you grew into
he
it.
even said, I'm going to be, he goes, really? I'm going to finish Starfleet? He goes, I'm going to finish in 6 months. I'll be done in 3, and I'll be captain here. There's a bravado that I do think that Chris Pine captures, but I felt it was a little unearned, being that he just had this great arc in Into Darkness. I wanted to see that arc continue and not be asked to be a vice admiral.
Why would he? I didn't get at all why he would want to be a vice admiral. I didn't get. I was like, why would he choose that? It doesn't seem to be in his character. It makes no sense to me. And the idea that he would, so you didn't really want to be in Starfleet. You did it on a dare. Okay, I understand that too. But really, you've demonstrated that that pretty much is your calling, and you're going to give that up. It just doesn't ring. That just ring true.
Well, I mean, the way I read it was that it was just something different from his father, and it was a progression. Because I did
he's still questioning who he is. Who are you going to be outside of the shadow of your father? I did
like the injection. You kept mentioning, Demetri, that it was a trope for Bones and him to have drinks, but the fact of, like, not only is he celebrating his birthday, it's also the death of his father.
So there is that. And do I want to end up like him, or whatever that was going through his mind at the time? No, those were all wonderful. It's just,
I thought it could have been played. By the end of it, again, I think we're celebrating more of his birthday rather than just.
It's a rebirth in a sense. So.
Yeah, and again, don't forget that Pike in 2009 said, your captain was Starship. Your father was captain of a starship for 7 minutes, and he saved so many lives. I dare you to do better. It's a great line in that movie, and again, it adds a different layer, in a little more backstory that we never really got in the television series so much, because the television series, unlike today's TV, it was extremely episodic. Each episode was meant to stand alone. And they carried that through all the other incarnations of Star Trek on TV. Yes, there were 2-parters, there were cliffhangers, but for the most part, each episode should be able to stand alone. Much as the movies should be able to in one way, shape, or form, these movies are giving us a little more backstory. Like, we see Spock as a child, we see Captain Kirk as a child, growing up and learning about his dad, and you get that. I like that. I joined Starfleet on a dare, but it's a great line in this movie. I just wish that they, again, cut out some of the action. Let me give give more to this story because it's a good story. There's good.
This is my main criticism of the
fiction.
movie is that you've got so much to work with, and you kind of didn't go for it. You let the action see. That's why I said the storylines and the character work it took a second seat.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Spock then, because you know you mentioned Demetri. It was a really good moment the way they treated that. Obviously, in a reference to Leonard Nimoy actually passing away, even though not directly stating it. And I thought that was, as you said, handled really well. But that too took a huge backseat. Yeah. And by the end of it, you know, we kind of resolve Kirk's thing in this, and we do resolve Spock that he's also going to stay.
Yeah.
But
and get back together with Uhura.
Do we get that?
There's a hint of that.
Hint of it,
of
but not
that,
quite
so.
like, hey, I'm gonna.
Yes, I mean the way he said. I can't remember the last line he says to her, but basically, I want to spend time with you or something.
I want to spend time with you socially. Said,
yeah, something like that, which is a huge thing for him. So we get there's a possibility of that going to continue.
I got that.
Yeah.
I mean, I got that at the end.
But that's where just because of Wrath of Khan and the way they worked that relationship between Spock and Kirk and how successful that was. Here they had pretty much the same time of screen time on that storyline. It had the one scene in the what do we call it? The elevator. Sorry, it's not the right term. What's the term?
Transporter?
No, the turbo.
No, when
the turbo lift?
Thank you,
the
turbo
lift. Yeah, sure.
And so there's that nice scene in there, and I'm going.
Yeah.
Again, they didn't really mind that relationship for as much as they could because it's just they realize they're better together than apart and stuff. But it's like it was like, oh, we should do this, and it felt like they could have really done a lot more with it.
I will give them credit on that scene. Again, if they had kind of continued it from there, that scene set up really nicely because it's just one of the most awkward things.
Yeah.
You go first.
Yeah.
I'll tell you later.
Yeah, exactly.
It was really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
just
really
wanted them to do some more with
the
those.
cast and the performances are great. And going back to I just loved the fact that they acknowledged, the original cast, and they did it. I felt in a really.
Great.
I thought they did it in a great way. And Spock's looking at this, going, "Wow, this is us in another time string," but this is Spock. This was Spock Prime's world, and look at these people. They look like they are a crew, and they look like family. Well before like Fast and Furious, hung its hat on family.
Right. Star
Trek really was about this crew,
Yeah.
and when you got into the movies, like it becomes more and more evident that they're so well together that if someone were to go away or accept a promotion and not be part of the family, you're like,
yeah, what would that
it's a
do?
bummer.
Yeah.
Like it's a real bummer.
And that's kind of one of the things that was strikingly missing for me is because the whole thing is that there's this family of diverse individuals and talents and all that other stuff, which is great, and that's what they set up. And then even Krall's talking about that you think diversity is your strength, it's your weakness, and I wanted everybody to be included in the overcoming Krall, and it wasn't really that. They didn't, Sulu didn't really have his moment. Chekhov didn't really have his moment. And I wanted that family, that diverse family, to overcome this force that was saying that's your weakness, and that didn't really happen. So they set this thing up that I wish they had paid off better because they didn't. They kind of did, but not really.
I will say one of the things going into it for me. Because Chekhov doesn't quite have the biggest role in the first movie, and then the second movie, I can't really remember him that much.
Yeah, but he just runs around and he saves this. Remember that?
Yeah, in the first movie, I mean, he is an integral part of beaming Kirk and Sulu up after that launch off of the platform, and he's running through. He's I don't know. He was. Well, he followed Jaya around.
No. What I mean to say is that I didn't know how much screen time he would get.
Right.
And I thought, Anton has another movie coming out still, but for this one, I thought he did a really good job, and he got a lot of screen time. And it was great to see him. Well,
it was it's a balancing act, I think. And this always led to friction on the set, of the original series. Many people felt that William Shatner hogged up all the scenes, and he actually talked to the writers and saying, "No, you got to beef up my scene," and throughout the movies and whatnot. But he always had he goes, he always had this one line where, and I'm paraphrasing, he said something to the effect of, "This show's about Captain Kirk and his ship." And like he has two friends who are the yin and the yang of his conscience, and the rest of the people are the crew. Like it's not called the Scotty show. Like this isn't the Enterprise engineering. This is Star Trek. I'm the captain of the ship. So I sort of get it. But what the movies have done is they've done that fine balancing act. Even in motion picture or Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, certainly because all the fans they appreciate those characters. They want to see more of them, and they usually this one to me didn't have as good of a balance. Because, like you said, we spent a lot more time with Spock and
spent a lot of time with
Bones,
with Spock and Bones in this one.
And even with Jayla, which is nice. I'm glad they brought somebody else in.
I thought she was a great breath of fresh air.
But I think at the expense of leaving a few of them behind.
Yeah, I mean, even in a movie like
because Uhura, how many lines did she have?
But again, I felt she was a little bit.
I wanted to see her do a little bit more and react to how she was feeling about Spock.
Yeah.
I mean, because it wouldn't have taken much to give these characters wonderful moments, because they could have easily taken away some of the action sequences just to give those moments. But advance some characters.
I felt Uhura in this movie though too was part of some key integral scenes as to what was going on that was moving the plot.
Yeah.
But even when you look at a thing like
but it got reduced down to a tracking device.
Yeah, exactly.
Say that again.
Reduced down to a tracking device.
Yeah. I mean that was very funny, but unfortunately for Uhura, it kind of lessened her ultimately.
Yeah. Well, in Star Trek 3, Uhura has a great, again, the crew becomes a little bit separated, but you got your core. You've got Kirk, McCoy, you got Scotty, and Sulu. Taking the Enterprise out to go find Spock, but Uhura has a great thing in breaking McCoy out of prison, and she flips the guy. She goes, "Don't call me Tiny," or no, that was Sulu. I'm sorry, Mr. Adventure. Oh, Mr. in the transporter. She goes, "Oh, Mr. Adventure, this is what you're gonna do." She has a great moment. Nichelle Nichols did. Oh yeah, I would have wanted some more of those great moments and beyond. But again, I really think that the cast has gelled together as a family.
They have,
when they're together, they're great.
It's great, which is why, because they can do it and it works real well, they should take advantage of it and do it more.
Well, let me ask you, there's some, in terms of the action, right? We've been talking about a lot about it, but someone said when I was reading that when we didn't have Star Wars in the movies, it was kind of needed, right? There was that void, and you needed. That's Star Wars is aptly named Star Wars, but we needed something that was a little bit more actiony. Now, because we have Star Wars and are going to have more, now that we got Rogue One and so forth, now Star Trek can go back to being more heady and separating itself in that way, and it can offer something different from Star Wars.
Maybe, it's funny because Chris Pine was recently quoted saying, "You can't do that kind of Star Trek in today's world." And I was thinking about what he said, and to an extent, it's hard to not be able to argue against it because, will an audience stay in there? I mean, for a really great example, look at Interstellar. Jesus Christ, you can't get any headier of a science fiction movie. And, that's not doing Star Wars business, but it's very heady. But you've got, that movie had the benefit of big promotion behind it, Christopher Nolan behind it. If you're doing a Star Trek movie today where people are looking for Star Wars, more kind of superhero kind of action, it sadly seems to have to take a little bit of a back burner. My argument against that is well, everybody reveres like Wrath of Khan. Well, just make stories like that.
That's what I mean.
Make it a character story and put the action in there that's predicated by the the drama that's happening on screen.
The audience will be there for a story with action, without action, as long as it's compelling and interesting. They will. Yeah. They just will, because the story is there. People, they go for the spectacle, but the reason why they keep coming back and talking about it is the story.
I agree.
I mean,
how many people talk about the action sequences from Wrath of Khan? not really. That's
No, but
not
no.
About, it's not about the
it's
action
there.
sequences.
But I'll take Undiscovered Country.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing send off for the original crew that has some pretty decent sequences. But again, it's not. Those don't make the movie. It's the story of why this is called Undiscovered Country. Where's this crew going? And then when you look at movies like First Contact with Next Generation, and the Borg, again, you had a really great story in there that had some super sequences. And that's all you really have to do. Don't go so far into detail that, this was in an episode and people really like this. Yeah, have it in there, but make a story around what makes James Kirk tick. Like, why is he feeling already old when this is his third movie? Like he should be like. And to your point too, because Phil, you made a great point. It's like, he can only be himself if it's predicated by war. He's got to be in this situation. Like, you can have adventure without, like, yes, James Kirk has saved the universe time and time again, but they've made it around whether it's saving the whales or whether it's saving his best friend. Yeah. And if they had saving his best friend or saving this or saving Jaya or something, they could have come up with that, I think, with just watch those great movies.
Yeah. I sort of agree with you guys. I would be, I don't know, maybe it's a curiosity thing. I would be interested to see what they could do, and if action wasn't the thing.
Well, watch Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Rated G.
Wow.
Yeah. I listen, like that.
But don't you think that was a great idea, just not well executed?
Yes. No, I actually, as the years have gone on, I actually respect motion picture a little bit more and more. I think they did. I think what they did was a really great idea.
Great idea. They just didn't execute it really well.
Then, again, they rebooted by coming up with Wrath of Khan. And with Wrath of Khan, I think they were just so able to explore more about character development and arc. Yeah. It would have been nice for, in this movie too, I would have liked some reference to Carol Marcus.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
It kept because you made the point. What would happen if one of them left? Well, we set up that one was going to join them, and then...
Yeah. And Carol Marcus, as in the Prime universe, plays a major role. I mean, she fathers James Kirk's son. Yeah. So they have a relationship there, and she wasn't even really mentioned.
Yeah,
so,
she's just gone.
And again,
teleported.
Yeah, wouldn't it have been like, what happened? Like, I have a son. Like stuff like that.
Well, that could have been used as part of the motivation why he's second guessing himself. It could have been all kinds of things. I mean, that coupled with the idea that not only his birthday but his father's death. I mean, that would have been useful.
Yeah,
they could have used that perfectly for character motivation.
Yeah,
and it would have explained everything. It would have been
sure.
So speaking of character motivation, let's talk about Krall. The villain of this. Well, he's our villain of this.
He is our villain.
And
Lizardhead.
It's kind of interesting. They set it up early in terms of the security cameras and seeing the footage, and then obviously it plays a major role in the end. It's just
way at the end.
Was it too simple in a way?
For me, I lost interest because they didn't give. I would have preferred, maybe a low man on total ball on this, but I would have preferred that they pieced that information out a little bit so you get a little bit to keep that story. By the time I learned who he was and what it was really about, I was like, it was too late, and then it was a lot of expos about why he was doing what he was doing and all this other stuff, and it was just...
In your own words, what was he doing?
Well, he was a warrior that got relegated to being in peacetime, and he got sent out, basically sent out to pasture, and then he got stuck on this planet.
And the solution is to kill everyone.
Well, yeah, that's where I was like, okay, and he's, for however long, how many hundreds of years he's been staying alive?
Quite a bit.
Whatever it is. And so this was his plan all along to
popular guy.
What was
Technically
terminated?
going.
Communication.
Yeah, so his plan is to get back at him, and I guess part of it, we can assume
At
that
least
all these.
show the audience so they know what the hell it actually
Yeah,
is, the
what we're
communicator,
doing.
so they know everything.
This is an actual Bluetooth communicator,
There
which
you
I
go.
could, if need be,
Use as a phone.
it can be used as a phone. I can call anybody here
Tell
on
Scotty
So,
that
so
we
the
need to-
blips and everything you're hearing from that. Okay, so but to get back to this, we can assume then, or I would infer that all these things that are keeping him alive, and every time that he takes on the life force of whatever else is affecting his brain because he's not all there. But the plan is, just to get back to avenge what they've done to him in some sense, to kill everybody. Which I go, okay, it was.
Who do you,
I didn't.
Is it sometimes better when it's like isolated revenge? Meaning, like, okay, if you, John, were the guy that screwed me over, then
Right.
okay, then
Yeah, if
the
more personal it is, the more.
Because that's why the Red
Yeah.
Rent works so well. It
Yes.
was just a personal vendetta.
Yes, that's what I think. But and it was odd because I'm going, wait. So for hundreds of years he's been out there. He's trying to survive by taking life force of what other beings he comes in contact with.
Right.
And he's been plotting against.
And
the-
he's gone through some change.
Yeah, because of whatever assimilation
You are
that
what you
occurs. Exactly. Thank you. Your life force. You take on other. But I'm going. So for hundreds of years he's plotting his revenge, and why is it taking this long to do anything to be noticed? So he's just been waiting for the. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. The. And what is it? The doomsday device.
It's the Abernath.
Thank you, the
Abernath.
Abernath. Thank you. I couldn't remember it at the time. Or did that just happen to be, and then he puts the plan into action? It was just so not cohesive, and I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. Again, it's an interesting. Again, they were taking from the episodes in which a captain or an admiral or a commodore goes off the rails.
In a sense, I mean, he gets
Well, in a sense, he's
Outcast.
like Khan, but there were other episodes in which a starship would have crashed on the planet,
Right.
And
Stranded.
and then the captain's on this planet with people who aren't quite Federation ready, and like in one episode, I was just trying to, I'm having a brain fart. It's a cool episode because they go on this planet, and this guy is like, Hitler sort of had it right. Throw aside, but that's basically what it is.
Eugenics?
Like,
Okay.
throw aside the genocide.
Right.
Like his
But we have a
ideas
master.
of keeping order were like and like
I see.
Kirk and Spock, like they fent it and they going, dude,
guy's
really?
nuts.
Like this guy's nuts. And then of course there were great episodes where. Like the Doomsday Machine, where a Commodore loses his entire crew because he made a wrong decision, and he goes a little bit bonkers and takes over the Enterprise to go attack a problem, saying, "I learned my lesson. I you know what? I can win this time." And Kirk's like, "No, with my ship, you're not." So these tropes are a common theme, even going up to Next Gen and all these things. Starfleet gone bad or gone loopy.
But how do you think they laid this one out?
I don't think that they laid it out in a way that was.
This felt like I can see why Simon quit 4 times. I'm guessing a lot of the problems that this final script have is because people are shoving all kinds of things in there. I would love to have read what he put out first before it got altered to this, because it was probably way more cohesive and understandable.
I wish it wasn't as convoluted.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't as convoluted. And again, throw that mirror up, like.
Well, I think a lot of movies face this problem. I am a firm believer that simple motivations work easiest.
Yeah,
But I think we try to make it too simple in the sense that, okay, your main villain is out to destroy the world.
Which,
Come on, and that's I just don't. That's
you
why
gotta-
Avengers, Age of Ultron, to me didn't really. In order to save humanity, we must kill humanity because humanity is not good. Like,
Right.
Oh, okay.
But in a sense too, if you think about it, isn't it sort of kind of the same, a similar story plotting that the first Star Trek was, where you have this Romulan who sees his world collapse and explode, and he knows that, and he blames Spock, and he's like, you know what, the world would be a better place without the Federation, but he actually goes and tries to attack the Federation. I was thinking, well, a friend of mine said, well, if this guy could fly and stuff, why didn't he just go there?
That's what I mean. I was like, what?
Like, why didn't he just, like, what's he doing?
Well, let me ask you this.
He has the ability. Why is he taking him hundreds of years? He has those amazing ships.
Let me ask you,
what the hell?
Because this is the part of it that I didn't quite understand. They've never gone that far or whatever through the nebula.
Yeah.
Right.
And I didn't know what that meant. It seemed
Well, I
too
think they were
like,
trying to establish the reason why they've never come in contact with this.
I get that,
before,
but then it just seemed like within 2 minutes of hyperspace.
I know. Then it's there, and it just makes
it was easy.
Yeah, we're that close to Yorktown. Hey, look at that. Let's go get them. Yeah, it didn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me.
And I mean, if the girl was able to get out,
yeah.
Why couldn't anybody? It didn't seem like she made the toughest journey imaginable.
Yeah.
It took her a few years, if I remember correctly. No,
I don't know.
Again, therefore, the Enterprise it took them literally screen times 30 seconds.
Yeah. At the motorcycle.
It's just that's what it just kind of deflated that argument.
Yeah. It was the only thing to me that was really fascinating about that as a Star Trek geek was the timeline that they set up. Okay, being the USS Franklin.
Oh, that
the NX, like the Franklin, and again, this is like that.
No, I love that when they do that.
Yeah,
they really flesh out that was terrific.
And they're fleshing it out because they're referencing, like, say,
Other
Enterprise,
thing, exactly.
which Enterprise, but Jonathan Archer's NX-01 was the first starship to reach warp 5.
Right.
So we know that the Franklin predates that, and the Makos, who are also referenced in the show Enterprise. Like, I love that stuff. As a Star Trek geek, you don't need to know that stuff to enjoy the movie. But I was like really going, okay, so they're really weaving in this reboot. They're taking history from actual canon from Star Trek Prime, let's call it. But I love that they're doing that, and they had the close to Archer class starship. And
yeah, but if you're gonna do it, you got to make it work for this movie.
I understand.
Well, here's the interesting. We haven't said this yet. Justin Lin is a Star Trek fan, and that to me, based on some of the criticism that I've been reading, was it was almost like a shock. I was like, oh, I didn't realize. But I'm glad he's a fan, because I don't, I would have felt even worse, like, criticizing it if he wasn't a fan, and he didn't approach it in the right way.
Right.
And, while it has problems, at the end of the day, I think he handled some of that with respect, in the sense that, again, all these references, I think him and Simon could have gotten up.
And I don't agree. I don't agree. If we were going to talk a little bit production-wise, Roberto I hope I'm not butchering his last name. I think it's Orci. Orci.
I don't know.
Orci. He was involved with Star Trek Into Darkness. Collaborator with J.J. Abrams. He was set to direct this. Okay, he was set to direct the movie. And a couple of people asked me, like, they're going, "What do you think of him directing the movie?" And I'm like, I'm fine with it until he proves me otherwise. I mean, he's worked so closely with J.J. Abrams. I don't see why he couldn't do a good job. And I get why Paramount's doing it, because they can pay him cheap. He obviously has some chops, but people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe they're putting the movie in his hands," or whatever. Eventually, I guess, it came out of his hands, where he stepped out of that position. He's like, I'm not going to be involved creatively. But it was interesting to me as to one of the people who threw their hats in the ring to direct the movie. And I was a little bit surprised, being the 50th anniversary, that they didn't even, and I don't know how far they entertained the idea, or if they ever entertained the idea, but Jonathan Frakes said, I would love to direct this Star Trek sequel. Jonathan Frakes, the Star Trek fans, number one in Star Trek The Next Generation. He directed First Contact, an Insurrection, and, like, he has a pedigree. Like, he knows the world of Star Trek. He knows that it's not predicated on action. I would have been really interested and fascinated to see where he took this, and understanding he's been around for a couple of Star Trek anniversaries. He might have given it that oomph that it needed. I would like to know why. I mean, I get why going with Justin Lin. I can see that from from the dollars and cents sign because Fast and Furious. But Jonathan Frakes would have been, I thought, an amazing way to go in doing this before they end up coming to Justin Lin. That's just, you know.
I agree. I'm trying to look at some of the other people that they were looking at.
Edgar Wright.
I didn't read him, but
Yeah,
I got
he was
Rupert Wyatt,
slated.
Daniel Espinosa,
Espinosa?
Duncan Jones. Those are the people that I had. Again, I don't know to what level this is true or if just rumors, but
I just say Commander Riker, I think, could have done a really good job. And again, if you didn't, they may have learned their lesson, because when you had a movie, and I think it was a Star Trek Nemesis, which was directed by Stuart Baird, who wasn't a Star Trek fan. And I think, I'm not a hater of Nemesis. I think it has a good Star Trek story at its core, but from a direction standpoint, I think he just didn't get it from a, it sort of has a disjointed feel to it amongst the cast. Had you let somebody like a Frakes, who's already been in the franchise and understands it and gets it, I think this would have been a different movie. Going with Justin Lin, that automatically puts a stamp on it as to what you're going to. You pretty much have an idea of what you're going to get, I think.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, what could he? I mean, I think he got hired because Paramount wanted the action. But do you think he's capable? Because we haven't seen it yet to do a different type of movie. But that's what's so interesting about Nolan, is that he can go from like Batman to Memento to the and just.
Oh, what would it have been like to have him?
Not Nolan. What I'm saying is like to see Justin Lin do something, because you're talking. You mentioned Demetri, that we've seen Fast and the Furious where they're flying through the air and they got to catch each other. Yeah. Just to see Justin do something, like he's pulling tricks out of his old hat.
Yeah.
Right.
To do something different for Justin Lin.
Mm-hmm. Right. Interesting. I mean, that argument, like Michael Bay has tried to do that. And we talked about, what was that movie? 13 Days, which we said was a pretty good movie. He always strives to try to get out of the Transformers world. I mean, it would be interesting. I mean, I think setting Justin Lin into this science fiction universe and putting him into Star Trek, again, I understood the decision as to why, and I don't think he was miserable at it. I just think that it just needed a little bit more reining in, and they needed to flesh out a little bit more of a story to predicate story over the action that he shot, because some of it really, from production design through the costuming, and some of it actually really did look amazing on the big screen. And again, I saw this in 3D, and there were sequences that just stunning. Like, I was literally, wow. I mean, the way he rolled the Enterprise certain ways, I had never seen, and I was impressed.
Mm-hmm. Well, Zoe Saldana describes him as hardworking, very dedicated, very professional, a lot of varies, very focused, and very driven. So that gave me a sense of security, that I am going to work relaxed, and I felt myself in this director's hands because he knows where we're going. So I loved it when I can trust the director. In terms of him looking after the emotional beats and the arcs of each character, I was happy and proud when he got the job because he's a director I've been rooting for a while, and I've always felt he had a lot more in him, and I am happy that Star Trek gave him another layer of sense of direction that he shared with us.
Wow.
So that's from Zoe.
There we go. Glowing words.
Now, has it been, I know they've already greenlit the next movie, and they've already, like, the other big thing that they've announced is that in one way, shape, or form, they're bringing Chris Hemsworth back, but have they announced a director?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I haven't heard anything about that yet. So it's going to be interesting if he wants to continue in Star Trek, or whether JJ susses out somebody else.
Yeah. I hope he susses somebody else.
He at least kept, that was another thing. Like, JJ made his stamp in the Star Trek universe by making, I think, 2 extremely solid, entertaining Star Trek movies, but 2 words: lens flare. And there was a little bit of lens flare in this movie. I go, that's the homage to JJ.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Near the open?
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, oh, great, look at that. We got more lens flares.
Gotta have it.
Yeah.
Gotta have it.
I never understood it.
Yeah. I didn't either, but it's like, oh, we're going to do that through the whole
Lens
thing?
flare. That's great.
Nah,
Thankfully,
not for me.
they didn't. So.
I have freaking lens flare. Just laziness.
I loved. I don't know. For me, it distinguished it. It put a stamp on his Star Trek movies. But again, he was very innovative too, and I've yet to. We're talking about special effects. I know that they took a lot of time and care, but JJ used some pretty simple things like that skydive in the first Star Trek movie. He just had his actors standing in a mirror with the camera up above, and they're looking up. And
we don't know any difference. It looks great.
That's awesome. That's practical.
Shaking the camera.
Shaking the camera.
There you go.
Which is what they did in the original show all the time. Just shake that every time the
if it
ship
works,
gets
it works.
hit. Yeah, if it works, it works.
Yeah, I agree. Well, a lot of the crew that worked on this was familiar with Justin Lin.
Yeah.
I mean, from cinematographers to editing. So, every one of these people pretty much on their resume, everything Fast or Furious. And they just switch it up depending on the next movie.
Right.
And it was interesting, too, because I found a really great article about the editors on the film who had worked with Justin Lin before. And they're like, it was very fascinating to know what they're looking for right from pre-viz. And then, like, having that communication and what Justin Lin is looking for. They are their own little enterprise crew, and then having to work with visual effects and how are we compositing, how are we going to put together a scene that's done on green screen. And I just found that whole journey of editing this movie and then having to separate, either going to Vancouver and how you're doing your dailies and you're looking all together and just trying to cut this movie and pace it in a way. I found this to be very fascinating work to do. And I wonder, is 3 editors the norm, or is it because you have such less time, you need 3 people to work together to try to?
I think it's part of that. I mean, the interesting part was too. There's an article that came out of there's going to be no deleted scenes, no bonus scenes, and the simple truth of that is they didn't shoot anything.
Yeah.
They only shot what they needed because they didn't have time to do anything else. So in a way, that's beneficial to the editors.
Yeah, I never believed that though. I mean, there seemed to be scenes that could have been something else or another line of dialogue here. It just, I don't know. I never believe when I rarely know of a film that doesn't have some semblance of something that was deleted, or there's always an editor's baby. Like what did you have to cut out that you really wanted in that movie that you had to cut out for either time or at the end of the day, logically it could work. The movie could work without it and be as succinct.
Yeah, what was I think? Did we talk about it on Ghostbusters how the original cut was over 4 hours?
Oh Jesus!
I forget what movie we talked about, but there was a movie that was over 4 hours.
Yeah, I remember talking about
that. I go back to our friend John Ottman. He's again. It would be curious to see what the rough cuts are for if somebody else was to do an apocalypse, what that would look like. Because as John Ottman puts it, it's very. The way he cuts it, he needs to have it be as tight as possible from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because it's to his benefit. If Apocalypse was 3 hours long and he knew he needed to cut out 40, 50 minutes, it wouldn't do him any benefit.
Yeah. And plus, being that he has other duties, he has to make sure that the movie can be as tight as possible. So once he can go on to scoring. He has to put all the red alerts. He has to make sure there are no red alerts ahead of time, so to speak. But that was a great conversation because he talked about 2 scenes that were shot not shown in the movie. It would be interesting to know what these people, like Justin Lin or the editors, had to have had a scene and or shot that they wanted in, but they just couldn't use for some reason.
Yeah, and I would be interested to see how the rough, the timing of the rough cut.
Yeah.
But if it was as tight as possible, then kudos to them, you know. And ultimately, my message: if you're editing a movie, kill your babies before you even have a chance
to grow.
Yeah. Into an idea. No, because it's so much easier to cut it out beforehand. Like once people start seeing it in the movie, they're like, "Oh, we can't cut that out."
Oh, so and then it changes everything, and
just be like, "Wasn't there a scene? No, there wasn't a scene. We don't have that. What are you talking about? No, it was in the script, but you guys never shot it. Yeah. You don't want to shoot it."
Well, you know, I can add a little bit of background in this interview again. If it's on our notes, you'll be able to check this out because it's a very in-depth look into editing Star Trek Beyond. But something that was asked was, can you think of a specific example of a story moment over an editing moment, which is what we've been talking about a lot of, right? Yeah. And Highsmith, one of the other examples, says, you know, a specific example I was discussing was a great one-shot of Kirk in the takedown sequence. We really needed to clock in with Kirk at a key emotional beat in the scene. I think we all decided that instead of preserving the integrity of the 360 shot, it was better to cut it in two so we could take the first half and move it earlier where we needed it to clock him for the emotional beat, and then we could come back and use the tail of it later for the kinetic energy. So they had this 360 shot. We're going to cut it. We're going to use part of it over here, part of it over there. You know, and then we hit an emotional beat and an action beat at the same time. I find that stuff very fascinating. You know, and to that question of, do you choose what's your editing moment over story moment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in terms of, this is both a editing thing, but also a visual effects thing. The ships, right? The swarm. That was 250,000 ships that they had to create.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, they started, okay, so they experimented early on, and Peter Chang, you know, they started with 2,000 ships, and then they doubled it to 4,000 ships. And
we got all the way to 250,000.
They just, that's what needed to end up.
It's a lot of ships.
It is a lot of ships.
It's a lot of ships. Here's my Star Trek geek question, because much was made mention of these ships, right? A hive-like mentality.
Yeah. Drones.
Were these precursors to the Borg?
Interesting.
And, you know, boy, wouldn't the next gen crew would have loved to have had the Beastie Boys around to disrupt this hive-like mentality of the Borg. But all I kept on thinking was, here we have this captain who's gone through this significant change, and he has all these drone-type ships that he can control, like a hive-like swarm, looking to forget about diversity. I can be supreme being. I was like thinking, could this be a little bit of a genesis of the Borg? But that's just my Star Trek geekdom. It doesn't impact whether you know what the hell a Borg is. No. It doesn't, but
no,
I just got to throw it out there.
It's interesting.
That's all I kept on thinking with hive-like mentality.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And this was one of the first movies that was also shot using a lot of like they were in Vancouver primarily and whatnot. So
Dubai.
Dubai was the inspiration for Yorktown.
Yeah.
You know, they and by the way, someone described it pretty well. You know how JJ's camera just moves every which way?
Yeah.
It's like someone took that idea and that's what created Yorktown. Just the idea that there's no up or down.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
I did like Yorktown a lot.
I did too. It was
Yorktown,
it was odd and confusing at first. I was like, what? Whoa, this is...
How do you say... It was like almost you know the paintings that...
Escher.
An Escher.
Yeah, it was an Escher painting, exactly. Yeah, it was. I thought it was interesting, very visually stimulating, because it was just, what am I looking at?
I thought it was okay. It was amazing to me because, again, we got these amazing scenes of the Enterprise going into this
and
tube, like this launch
underwater.
bay.
I was like, what is this?
I was like that. I was like,
and it was small.
Yeah,
scale.
It was small, and I was like,
what?
wow. And again, I'm thinking, the Yorktown is one of those ships. It was a ship. It was a Constitution class ship from the original series, in which I believe a captain went a little bit nuts. But in here, another
don't
trope.
Let's be honest.
they don't. but another Star Trek trope is the Enterprise goes to they go to various space stations. So having a Yorktown space station out there, you need these space stations for the starships to go refuel, fix up, do whatever. I actually thought it was a sort of kind of a pretty cool. It was almost like a respite. It was a bit of shore leave for our crew.
I thought it was great.
Speaking of respites, John is off to another mission, so we're going to let him do any final thoughts that John wants to get.
Final thoughts. I think fans of, for the most part, will enjoy this. I'm certain. First of all, I'm a fan, and I'm glad they made it, and I'm can't wait to see the next one. I wish this one had done better in terms of its structure and story.
All right.
But I'm glad that I like that they keep putting them out there because I like these characters. I want to see them. And
what's your next anatomy that you're going to be doing with us?
We're doing Born next week.
Oh, there you go. All right, we say goodbye to John Comerford, but Demetri and I continue
Comerford
on.
out.
Comerford out.
Thanks,
That's right.
John.
All right.
Well, I wanted to let's talk about something else that I want to talk about something else, and it's a key part in the Yorktown scene that made a bunch of hoopla before this movie came out, because in the Yorktown scene we see that.
Oh, you're going to the gay scene?
Yes.
Okay.
That's were you going to go there later on? I mean, I just figured since we're talking Yorktown,
might as well. Takei went and said that this was not the vision of the creator, but he is gay, so that's what they were nodding to. I don't have a problem with it.
Again, to me, it's a non-issue. I could really care less, but it's interesting how this all precipitated to me, because I think it almost seems like they wanted to do it. Let's have our first gay character, in Star Trek in this timeline. Okay, I get it, fine. And they were trying to be cool with it. Oh, well, if we're going to do it, why don't we pick Sulu? Because the guy that plays Sulu, is openly gay. That'll be sort of cool, and he'll probably really dig it. And boy, howdy, they were like a little bit wrong. And by a little, they were like a lot wrong. It's like they didn't do their due diligence. Like, again, I don't mind that a character is, but I understood both sides of the story. And what ended up happening is it became bigger than the scene that's in the movie. It became this story that to me is just who cares? Like, it's a non-entity. But then you have George Takei, who is like, well, I'm disappointed because that's not the way I played Sulu as a straight man. That's, he had a whole background. And I get it, because even in movies like Generation, there's a great line, and it goes back to Captain Kirk, and his feeling of, what have I done outside of my life? Outside of being a captain, what have I done in my life? He's on the bridge of this ship, and it's being helmed by a Sulu. And he goes to Scotty, he's like, when did Sulu have time to have a daughter? And Scotty's like, he found the time to have a family. And again, not that you can't have a daughter as a gay couple, but they never set it up that way. And I get what George Takei was saying. So I understood that, the integrity of what Gene Roddenberry wanted. On the other hand, I understand what Simon Pegg was going for, but it wouldn't, just introduce a new crew member or whatever. A lot of hullabaloo ended up coming out of this back and forth, that when you see the scene, it's like the scene's not even 10 seconds. It's nothing. And it ain't a big deal. And it shouldn't have been a big reveal. Because at the end of the day, who cares?
I mean, if nothing else, so it does kind of... You can argue that there's a greater nod to that. It speaks to diversity, for a show like Star Trek to have done... that was its biggest compliment, was the amount of diversity.
Absolutely.
So, does that trump what Takei is saying? I don't know.
He's still Asian. Bottom line is, Takei was there as an, and he always says, as an Asian being on the ship of this flagship Starfleet spaceship that does interplanetary exploration and adventure, and I'm an Asian on this. When you look at the bridge of the Enterprise, you had an African American, a Scottish person as your engineer, you had a Russian at a time when Russians really weren't like. There was a little bit of a Cold War going on. They weren't looked too keenly. You had a Russian as a navigator. You had an Asian person as your helmsman. The diversity on that bridge alone, and then you had an alien as your second in command, and who is your prime science officer. You know, the diversity in Star Trek in the 60s, people while watching it may have overlooked it because it's a television show, but what it did for diversity in science fiction and in television, still you can feel the effects today. By making Sulu gay, I get it, and Star Trek is about diversity, and that is another theme that they tried to put in this movie. Like, your diversity gets you nowhere. No, diversity got Star Trek 50 years of fandom, 50 years of being loved, and it's because of its diversity in a sense. So there you go.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You didn't care, right? I mean,
to be honest, I didn't even know. I thought that was like a friend or something. Like, I mean, no, because it wasn't. They had more. That was one of the things that they cut down a bit on, because I think they had more. Like, they could have had a kiss or whatnot. I forget the full story. But I think the studio made him cut it down a lot, and so I might have turned. It was just so quick.
So quick.
And to me, it was more about Spock, or not Spock. It was more about Kirk looking at it and being like, "Oh, these are all the things I don't have.
These are the things I don't have."
You know, that's what it was about to me.
Same here. And you know what? Had this not gotten blown up to what it is, it would have been an afterthought. It would have been, wait, what is Sulu doing? And then it could have been explored. To me, I felt that it was sort of sad that news came out before the movie hit, because I really think it took away. I do. I think it's a non-issue that ended up taking away from the release of the movie. I don't think it impacted gross or anything, but the focus of marketing and the focus of releasing this movie should have been, we've gone beyond to give you fans and to give movie-going audiences the best 50th anniversary movie that we could share with you. And then you bring up this whole gay thing, and it just took away from the movie itself, and that to me was sad.
It was very sad, yes, indeed. Let's, in terms of, right, so we're kind of, we took a tangent because we were talking about Yorktown. Victor Martinez is he was the concept design artist.
Yeah.
And he made so many designs that never ended up kind of, on screen. And I don't know how he got the permission for this, or he even got permission for this, but he put them on his Facebook page. So you can definitely check them out. We have a couple of them here. And again, if you're listening on audio, just in the rundown, there's a link to it so you can kind of see it. But there's various images. So there's one that apparently didn't make the movie.
Right.
What other ones do we have, Marissa? I don't know. You know what the hell these things are.
No, I mean, these
idea.
look like
pictures.
these right there. I mean, I can't see that really up close, but look at that of the planet. Which is
very bright. And it's, again, we're going to have to cut out the word again from our vocabulary, one of the fans said, and we will. But
what's that word?
Marissa, go back to the planet. Right, so earlier on in the episode, there was the notion that Star Trek wasn't bright enough. This image encompasses... if this isn't bright enough, then right. I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's bright.
So.
A lot of this reminds me of some of the older... thematically from like the Ralph McQuarrie art from Star Wars. He was doing a lot of conceptual design work that when you look at his works and what ended up on the screen, sometimes it's 100% different. And in fact, McQuarrie was also hired to do some artwork and conceptual art for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I have a poster of the McQuarrie Enterprise that he did, and that's what concept art is. You give your director, you give your crew a ton of great ideas. Some of them could be great, but they end up getting jettisoned. I just say you put it in a book, because I love great concept art because you really get the genesis of what you're like, what was being discussed and how that picture ends up on screen. So you can see almost like the changes, the evolution of what it becomes to fill up the big IMAX 3D screen of yours when you go see the movie. I love concept art like that.
Yeah. One of the things I absolutely loved in the movie was the hiding of the ship. The invisibility shield.
Yeah.
And the way they made that work, where it wasn't your typical, like, you know, it's just gone. We've seen that before.
Right.
And we've seen the invisibility cloak from Harry Potter.
Sure.
But it had an element of imperfection where you step on it in the wrong, like, if you kind of look at it, you can see it, but then not.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's not exactly worked out cloaking technology, but yeah.
I did. Yeah, that was
It was
really...
it was the shimmer effect and how, you know, that technology that was used for the motorcycle chase and such. You know, it was cool. You know, we were talking about our prime characters or our main characters, but for me, one of the breath of fresh airs in this movie was that character of Jaya.
Yeah.
You know, I really loved this character, and
she's modeled after Jennifer Lawrence.
Is she modeled after Jennifer Lawrence?
Let me read the quote.
Yeah, let's read that quote because that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Simon Pegg revealed in a press conference that the character of Jayla was inspired by Jennifer Lawrence from Winter's Bone. We were trying to create this very independent character, but we didn't have a name for it, so we called it Jennifer Lawrence in Winter's Bone. That was a long name. So it started getting tiring, always saying Jennifer Lawrence in Winter's Bone is fighting here. So then we started calling her J-Law. And then she became J-Law.
That's very funny. Very interesting. The actress that portrayed her, and I can never get her name right, but she was from Kingsman. Sophie Butea. She was great in Kingsman. And yes, she's underneath a ton of makeup, but yet she did not get hidden under that makeup at all.
No, she has attitude. The way she sits in the captain's chair with the leg, just so much attitude, and you get it.
She was great. And again, she has her own Kirk moment instead of like where Kirk would say, "What are you doing with my ship? Get off!" And she was like, "What are you doing with my house? What are you doing?" I thought she was a wonderful breath of fresh air. Great female, strong character. And at the end, again, they have that little Star Trek moment where Kirk, of course, would say, "Hey, I got you. You know, Starfleet Academy. Starfleet needs people like you. I got you in." You know, and it would be, I think she would be a welcome addition to the crew of this Enterprise if she were in one way, shape, or form to come back. You know, I thought she would fit in just great. You know, so she's a good character. Good character.
I agree. One of the final things before we move on to numbers and things like that, let's talk about the nod at the end. They did reshoot that. Very slightly. It's not like it needed a lot of reshoots, but and I forget the exact quote, but to friends here and remembered or something like that, and obviously a nod to what just happened recently with Anton.
To absent friends.
And also
a reference to that's been a common Star Trek. Wrath of Khan is one in which they toast. Oh, Star Trek 3, actually. My apologies. It was the search for Spock to absent friends. They Kirk and McCoy and the crew have a toast, if I remember correctly. A very subtle nod, but again, it hits home because he's still there. You know, he's in the movie. Anton. We're referring to Anton Yelchin. It's such a stupid, horrible tragedy, an accident that happened. And he made that role his own, you know, and he did such a good job that, you know, when you look at Koenig's performance of Chekhov, and these people, that's what this crew, these actors really did a good job of not playing caricature to the actual people that created these characters, because then you would have had a spoof, Then you could have had Galaxy Quest, which Galaxy Quest was great. But do you want that to continue? Yes, I wouldn't mind seeing another Galaxy Quest movie, but I don't want to see Star Trek spoofing Star Trek. And these people, including Anton, did such a magnificent job, and they reined it in so that they own the characters. They made the characters themselves. J.J. Abrams has come out and said that they're not going to recast the role, which I find to be very respectful. I think it's a great nod to Anton Yelchin and even to the franchise. I don't know how they will explain it, but
maybe they won't. Just like with what was her name again?
With Carol Marcus. Yeah, she just one day he just didn't show up to work. Maybe they'll have Jayla come in and take over. I mean, I don't know. They could put him on another ship.
And to be fair, that could work because she was good.
They hung out together a lot. Yeah.
They hung out together, but remember Scotty's doing the music.
Yeah.
And he can't do it, and then she's like, "Let me do it," and then she told you it was easy.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, but I found the entire thing to be very respectful to not only Anton Yelchin, but to the passing of Leonard Nimoy, who was very integral in the first two movies as well, and he couldn't have been Leonard Nimoy without knowing the man. But just from what I read, he seemed to be very proud to be part of the J.J. Abrams vision of Star Trek and to be asked to come on board. And he was used greatly, and he was integral to it. I enjoyed what Spock Prime did. I really enjoyed that scene, and it was, in a sense, emotional, but it was handled with respect. And again, it wasn't the thing that beat you over the head. I just felt it was very nice. And the for Anton at the end was nice. It was nice.
So let's talk about music as well. We touched upon it a little bit, but Michael Giacchino, he returns to do the score. So that through line is always good to see. Mm-hmm. And you kind of gave him his due props a little bit, but a fantastic, there's a lot of great composers out there. And he is certainly one of them. Yeah,
right now, I look at, to me, in my opinion, my top three, Giacchino's there. Our good friend John Ottman has to be there. And then another gentleman right now, Alexander Desplat, I think is a really solid composer. I think in this movie, Star Trek Beyond, he's obviously pulling from Alexander Courage, Jerry Goldsmith, and then there's a whole lot of Giacchino going on in there. He makes it his own. He and Justin Lin talked, with Justin Lin taking over the reins. You wonder, are you going to keep the same thing? But the one thing that they completely 100% agreed on is that they got to keep the theme. They got to keep the theme that Giacchino, through the J.J. Abrams movies, created around the Alexander Courage theme. And couldn't agree with them more. I've listened to the score on its own. It's a good score. It's a really solid score. I didn't find while watching the movie that it took away from the action. There's so much action in this movie. Sometimes score feels like it has to overpower what's going on screen because there's so much happening. But I didn't find it to be in this movie. And as listening it isolated, like in my car or at home, I find the score to be really good. Of the three scores that are, Star Trek, Into Darkness, and this one, to me, my favorite thus far is still Into Darkness. But this one's pretty good. This one's a good score. What were your thoughts?
For me, it worked. I don't listen to, I always judge score by kind of what's in the movie. Mm-hmm. In the action scenes, there's a lot kind of going on. And in a way, on this one, right, part of the reason why I didn't notice the score as much, it was trumped by the songs. Between Public Enemy, Fight the Power, and then the Beastie Boys, at that point...
And Rihanna.
And Rihanna, you know what I mean? Like, those just kind of... Because a movie like this, Star Trek isn't, it's not really supposed to be pop culture. It's not supposed to have those moments.
Right.
But because they did, and for me, Public Enemy it holds a special place, and that was there, and then just... the third act hinges upon the Beastie Boys.
Right.
So it musically, it's very different.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I treated those in a different way, and I didn't quite notice the score in the way that perhaps I should have.
Yeah, well, I neglected to mention, shame on me. I mean, all of these people, Gene Kino, Ottman, Jerry Goldsmith has had a major history in film, but the king of scordom, John Williams. But what I love about the three gentlemen that I mentioned was they still adhere to orchestration and bringing out the full orchestration. Gene Kino is great at working out percussion when needed and using
And there's some choral too, right?
Choral, yeah, and we had that with Ottman's score for X-Men Apocalypse, where he used choir, and but Star Trek has used choir since day one. The opening song to Star Trek, the women sing the operatic. Is Star Trek, and that's the great thing. That's another great thing about Star Trek television in the '60s, is that they used orchestral score, and they had scoresmen come in, and whether it be Alexander Courage, there was a whole litany of people that Star Trek used, but the background music was all orchestra. Mm-hmm. You don't find as much of that today. It's expensive, but when it translates into a big movie, and you're using a full-on orchestra, and you're creating these deep, rich themes, they should only enhance the action. They should never overtake the action. I didn't find that it overtook the action in Star Trek Beyond at all. So, Gene Kino keeps on doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see more from him. Obviously, he's going to have a good career.
I think so.
I think he'll be good. All right, so let's talk about box office. We were going to do this a little bit earlier in the week, but we pushed it back, so I might have a little bit old numbers. In terms of what I had, at least, it was always projected to make between 50 and 60 million its opening weekend, and it made 59.3.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Not too shabby.
Hitting that third mark.
Yep.
And you have the updated numbers as of... or as updated as they were, right?
Being where we are today, we could.
Today's Sunday, the second week of its running.
Sunday's the second week, and we could. Let's see. I believe it had a very modest. Its drop wasn't huge. Let's take a look. I can get a today's top 10, and we'll just focus in on Star Trek. We're looking at. Hold on, we got.
As you're talking about that, I'll talk about Rotten Tomatoes. So just let me know when you're ready. Rotten Tomatoes, when I checked it, 84% out of 201 reviews. So, not too shabby. It says Star Trek Beyond continues the franchise post-reboot hot streak with an epic sci-fi adventure that honors the series' sci-fi roots without skimping on the blockbuster action.
Yeah. So for this weekend, we have it did $24 million. It was off 60%, which right in there for that genre type of a drop. Plus it has competition.
I mean, Jason Bourne just came out.
Right. And so, but all in, total cume, 105 mil. Not too shabby. And again, though, I just go back, marketing. It could have been bigger. It could have been more had their marketing just given it the attention that Star Trek deserves for an entity that's been around for 50 years. And this is an entity...
To be fair, I think I've seen more Jason Bourne promos than Star Trek.
See, and I shouldn't have seen more Teenage Mutant Ninja promos everywhere. If you want to do it on Nick at Night or in Disney Cartoon Network, whatever. But I remember when Skyfall came out, I saw James Bond everywhere. There was no mistaking that this was the 50th anniversary of James Bond and Skyfall, and they put together this great marketing campaign. And this movie, I just felt sort of kind of got not put on a shelf, but it didn't hit anybody hard with that first trailer, and then it went quiet for the longest of times. And just going back to not having a 50th anniversary Delta Shield logo on a poster. This is an achievement, folks. Your Star Trek fans or your science fiction fans, Star Trek was a failed show after its third season. And to be talking, I mean, it's so crazy to me that I can be talking about Star Trek 50 years later and that it's still relevant today. And yes, maybe it's not what Star Wars is, but the thing with Star Trek that separates it from Star Wars is easy. Star Wars, you have 7 movies. That's all you really need to see, okay? Star Trek, on the other hand, which started off on TV, produced by Lucille Ball, of all people, we have episodes and episodes of television that some people are like, oh, I can't watch that all. That's a lot of episodes. You don't need to. You can watch the movies, but there are well over 10 movies within the Star Trek franchise, and they continue to go beyond. To me, that's an amazing feat all in of its own. Equally as amazing as James Bond turning 50. And Paramount just did not stick the landing at all. This movie deserved a heck of a lot more, and they could have gotten a better number because you had a good weekend. It's summer. You know, they had it all. They had everything going for them. They just never utilized it. Shame. Too bad.
Well, audiences like, I mean, they got an A- on Cinema Score.
Right.
So it's, you know, between Rotten Tomato, so critics and everyone, it's really high up there. You know, so, and that's the thing, like, it was always a good movie, and you know, Simon Pegg, going back to when we first kind of opened up in terms of the promotion, yeah, the fact that he was that disappointed over the trailer, and you know, I think at least for me, Simon Pegg has earned the right to be honest. Like, I believe it. Like, if he says that this is a better movie than what the marketing was saying, then I did believe him, because I don't think he's. Again, I don't know him personally, but it's not like he's lied to me in any way, shape, or form, and I do enjoy him and his movies, and so I got behind that. And it is one of those things, like, marketing and the people that are actually creatively involved in the movie are two separate things, oftentimes.
No, they absolutely are. And again, when Simon Pegg, and you're right, Simon Pegg, he gets my respect. You know, if he's going to say something, Paramount has to mitigate that, but they should have mitigated it before they released that trailer. And not that they needed to have brought Simon Pegg in on the creative decision as to what the trailer was going to look like, but they should have put something there. And they didn't even have a poster. Again, that's another thing. They didn't even have a freaking poster when the trailer came out. And you know, the key art, I think, for Beyond has been fantastic. I personally really enjoy. I think they've done a great job at all the various key arts. Like I said, my favorite is the throwback to the Star Trek the Motion Picture poster, but it was little too late. You're blasting an audience, and then you're changing concepts, and people can't latch on to that. This really should have been given. You should have had. Like, if it were me, and what do I know? But I would have started a year out with just black poster, the Delta Shield 50th anniversary coming next summer. That's it. That should have been out when Star Wars was in theaters. That poster should have been up so that people know, oh, you know, and that's listen to you. They should have timed this out to commemorate, you know, the 50th anniversary, which is in September. I don't know. They just missed the opportunity. And when I'm at a place like Comic-Con, I'm thinking, like, what amazing merchandise could there potentially be for Star Trek? It's the 50th anniversary. And J.J. Abrams has complained about this too. Their merchandising is just, it's not there. It's like, I can buy Star Wars stuff anywhere.
Oh, you can get 12 different versions of the lightsabers.
Right. And geez, you go to Disneyland or Disney World, you can buy whatever. It's Star Wars. You can go to J.C. Penney and put Star Wars. They're not putting their efforts behind their marketing. And I think from a merchandise perspective, yes, this communicator is really cool, but it took 50 years to have it. You know, Bluetooth technology's been around. You got to do more than that. People will buy shirts. They'll buy artwork. They'll buy the ships. They do, but just you got to get them out there. And I'm at Comic-Con, and I had to, like, I'm looking around going from booth to booth. I went to this one booth, which I bought a couple of books from. I'm not going to name their name because I'm going to say something that's not too cool, but they had an Enterprise, like a vinyl Enterprise. It looked really cool. I was about to shell $15 out for this vinyl Enterprise, and then they showed me the actual thing, and it looked cool. It didn't come with a stand. I said, how does this stand up? I go, does it come with a stand? They're like, no. Like, well, what do I put it on? Like, it's going to be flopped over its side. Like, what do I do with it? Like, if I can't display it in a proper way, how do you make a ship that doesn't have a stand? That's the kind of thing that was annoying me. And again, Paramount CBS, guys, you're blowing it. Like, you have rabid fans out there. We're on the eve of the 50th anniversary convention taking place in Las Vegas. Our friends from Creation throwing this. You know, I sure as hell hope that they have amazing merchandise to sell for the fans. Because we love Star Wars too, but the reason why they're winning in that thing is because there's more of it out there for me to buy, and so much less, sadly, of Star Trek stuff.
Well, the good news out of it is that Paramount announced that Payne and McKay will write the next installment, and there is, as we said, another installment. Pine and Quinto have signed on to return as Spock and Kirk, and there will be a fourth with Chris Hemsworth as Kirk's father. That's
it's going to be interesting.
I mean, that's a little bit of a spoiler.
Yeah,
in many ways.
Are they doing? Are they finally getting around to doing their time travel episode? Another popular trope in Star Trek universe. You know, are we going to slingshot around the sun, or it'll be interesting. They need to get Karl Urban back. They need to get that core crew back. You know, Karl Urban as McCoy, like from the 2009 movie. From the moment he showed up on screen, you just go, "Oh my God, he's Leonard McCoy. he's DeForest Kelly. He's amazing." You know, and everybody else, like, you know, Kirk's swagger, you know, comes at the end of that movie. But that cast is just so great together. I think they do a wonderful job. You got to keep them together for as long as you can. You can't swap these people out, because I think they've come to a point where they've owned these roles, and that's a good part of the reason why people will continue to see these reboot movies and beyond. Dare I say?
There you go. We'll leave you off on that note. I know there's plenty of more stuff that we could have talked about, but such is life. Hence why there was a comment section invented, so you can comment, let us know other thoughts, opinions, disagree with us, agree with us, but let us know why. Also post questions, anything like that. Or one of the coolest things is I like when you guys find stuff that we didn't find, and we get to talk about that. That's why I love Anatomy. We get to discuss these things. We get to go beyond the movie.
Absolutely, and I have to say to the people that watch us too, whether it's a positive or a negative comment, for the most part lately, you guys have been on point. And so, like, if it's something that we missed, you guys have been keen on saying it, and you've done it in a respectful way. Please keep that up. We do pay attention. We read. I know I do. Read all this stuff that you do. Put it in a, be respectful, and I will respond back. Phil, I know you're a great responder as well.
I try to as much as I can.
Yeah, same here. Even if people are negative, but just be cool about it, man. We're talking movies.
Yeah,
that's it.
And we will have. We're still in development on when we'll do the 50th for this and how we'll do it. So kind of stay tuned for that. We'll keep you updated as best we can on that, and we'll try to do something as special as possible. One of the cool things is Joe Braswell. If you're a historian of Anatomy of a Movie, we've had Joe Braswell on before, and he's a great filmmaker in his own right, and he's doing a 50th documentary for History Channel. No official. It's coming out sometime in August.
Nice.
And he's very proud of it. History Channel's very proud of it. So definitely check that out. I'll update you guys on that. D movies. And now it finally makes sense. D movies 1701.
1701. Yep.
That's Demetri's Twitter, and I'm sure as soon as we have a more official things in terms of the 50th. He will be posting about that.
And if you're living in the Los Angeles area and you see a white RAV4 with a license plate Trek Boy, beep and say and wave, hey.
All right, and we're the Popcorn Talk on Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you on the next Anatomy of a Movie, which we'll be doing another sci-fi movie, Sharknado. We've got Jason Bourne, we've got Sausage Party. Most recently, we just did Lights Out, Ghostbusters. We'll do War Dogs, and there's plenty more.
Plethora of movies.
So thank you guys. We'll see you next time on Anatomy of a Movie.
Long and prosper.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.